What are you doing?
You always were too curious, weren't you, Java? You just had to know. Maybe that's why you were always getting your pretty little fingers burnt.
Don't you ever leave off?
No, Siva. Not ever.
I should have buried you long ago.
Then why don't you try? Come on. Let's do this now. They will not interfere. I can take you both. Are you afraid?
Welcome to Series 4, Episode 9 of Conversation on Eagle Mountain, our podcast about the tribe. I'm your host Lance, and joining the podcast panel today is Liz.
Hello.
And Sabine.
Hi.
With episode notes done by Matt and myself. So Series 4, Episode 9. The screenplay was done by Tony Osborne. It was directed by Janet Stubbins, and the episode synopsis was read out by myself. An unlikely source spills the beans about Ellie's troubles. Ebony clashes with her sisters, and Lex and Dee struggle to balance their role with the morality of working under Techno rule.
But you can't give in to despair. I know all about that. It tries to fool you. It tries to tell you there's nothing and no one. But if you listen to it, you're listening to a liar.
Salene is surprised when the kids start talking, and even more so when they reveal Ellie's suicide attempt. Later, Ellie tells Salene that she was too cowardly to go through with it, but Salene makes her promise to keep fighting and to talk to somebody if she ever feels that way again. So yeah, what did you make of the discussion here between Ellie and Salene?
I think Celine's one of the very few people who could actually reflect on something like this with Ellie. Like, not a lot of them have been at such a severe level of desperation, with the exception of Trudy. But since he's not there, I think Celine's the best bet for this.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense that Salene cares and is able to say something like this. Like, there's not a lot of characters out there at the moment, sure, but most of them wouldn't have been this understanding and this focused on just please promise me you talk to someone, anyone. Yeah, I actually liked this moment, and I understood Ellie's response about it because she felt like she failed at something, even though, it wasn't a good plan that she wanted to jump. She couldn't go ahead with it, and yeah, I guess she feels bad about that.
Yeah, I think it's a nice quiet moment. It's well acted. Again, I think Jennifer Jewell is doing a fantastic job. It's very rare you ever see Ellie subdued. And that alone, I think, is properly worrisome for any of the audience who knows how energetic Ellie usually is. No matter how despaired she might be, she's usually even energetic in her despair, Ellie, when she's upset, is more likely to get, loud and say things, and she's action, action, action. So to see her like this, so quiet, it is scary. And I like that it's clear that that's what Salene is seeing and responding to. And I agree. I think of all the people who could speak to Ellie about something like this, given who's there, Salene, it makes sense. And even if some of the things Salene says, they would tell you shouldn't say to someone who's ever felt suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna. I think it's fine because she's simply speaking from her own experience. Salene saw herself as a coward for wanting to end things. She's not saying that that's the common. Everybody who feels that way is a coward. Just that's clearly how she reflected on herself as taking the cowardly way out. And her advice feels so earnest, just, promise me you'll talk to me. There's a underlying fear at her realizing she could lose another person, and she genuinely cares about that. And wanting to stop it. And it's just a beautiful, quiet moment away. And I even like the subtlety in Jennifer's acting. But when Salene tells her, "Promise me you'll fight, that you'll keep fighting," you can. Jennifer does this very subtle thing in her eyes and even her chin, the way it moves up, and you know that's the light bulb moment in her head, and it's not till later that you find out what you find out. I just love it that this was the moment that Ellie got to work, and I thought that was really great. Very actually, there were a couple moments like that in here that I thought were awesome for the little mystery that's going to pop up, and I was like, okay, that was nice. That was actually subtle foreshadowing and misleading of the audience. Well done.
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's head on to the marketplace.
Give you half a loaf for the locker. Hey, you want to eat or you want to starve? That's my price. You can take it or leave it.
That's enough.
What are you playing at?
The rest of the food's free.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
You gonna stop me?
Yeah. I think you've had a good enough morning as it is.
As the lady said, the rest of the food is free.
Thanks, Lex.
You little fool.
You think any other trader's gonna want to risk bringing food into the city once he spreads the word?
At this rate, we're all gonna starve anyway.
So yeah, panel, I know you're going to have an opinion about this. Do you agree, basically, with Dee's actions here?
I get why she did it, but I'm with Lex on this. It's a stupid plan.
Basically, yeah. Yeah. I mean, short term, yeah, you get to feed them with the food that you've just stolen from the trader, but then long term, then the traders will just stop coming to the city, offering their wares. So, I don't know.
How do you expect to feed people after this? Come on.
I will say this, as short-sighted as Dee's actions were, I actually, again, even though season 4 is completely inconsistent with how the city is reacting to the Technos and how willing they are to fight the Technos and blah, 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 and it's all over the map based on what the story needs them to be.
Oh, yeah.
I will say this, which is something we didn't get in season 3, and we all complained about it with The Chosen. At least we're getting visuals of what life is on the ground for everybody during this takeover, like how people are responding to the takeover, the logistics of people trying to live their lives and how that is interrupted because of the takeover. So I actually do appreciate that, they are setting the groundwork for the fact that, with the kids being unruly and unrested and not getting food because there's barely any traders coming in, because of course, why would traders come into a city where there's literally been an invasion and people have been snatched off the street and taken God knows where? Why would you come there to trade? You wouldn't feel safe to do it. And that means there's limited food, and it means people who are left really have nothing to trade with. It speaks to the fact that whatever economy that was slowly building up is completely collapsed. So people have barely anything to trade with. I just liked that we got a little of that information of what's actually happening to the populace outside of the mall, because that was genuinely lacking during the last takeover, and I also like the fact that it's a constant struggle that the Technos have to deal with, and I also just like the constant, the person in charge, this is what they want, and they delegate, so their delegates are trying to get them what they want, and the delegates will delegate, and you see this chain of command of people just screaming at each other, right? And so I just appreciated a visual and actually a conversation about something as simple as, these, like, they're hungry. The people, she sees this trader is ripping people off for food, a basic necessity. It upsets her. And she just acts from the goodness of her heart. And then Lex has to come in with the practicality. Like, he protects her, and makes it clear, because he has to save face. They have to be a solid team, but then reprimands her. Like, what do you think is going to happen now? If people are already barely eating, what happens when the traders stop coming entirely? you know?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I just liked that it was addressed, that it's being addressed, that the chain of supply, how it gets interrupted by an invasion and by a sense of danger and people not feeling safe. I agree with these actions. Guess you know, I I don't even really have an opinion because I'm not fully invested in this world. I don't know if that probably sounds like a cop out, but I don't know enough about Dee to understand her motives. I don't feel that invested. So yeah, I don't even know if I agree with what she did. I almost feel like who cares? Who cares what Dee did? It's just something that happens. You know what I mean? Like I know that's terrible, but that's just where my brain is with the story right now. It kind of just feels like doesn't really matter. Like what Dee did. Does it really matter?
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. I get why she wants to feed them though, but this was just a stupid plan.
Mhm.
And I normally don't feel like Lex has the brightest ideas, but he has a very good point with this.
I mean, he's generally always savvy about how things work. Like, but
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get to see it as much as we should, but he's generally quite locked on to what's going on. But I mean, I'm happy he backed her up and stuff. But yeah, I just think, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't agree with what Dee did, but I like that at least it's an insight into Dee, I guess. We get to see something from her, and you could even say it kind of plays into her kind of development later on, obviously with the whole hospital and patch and stuff. So you can kind of it's kind of little breadcrumbs being laid here. I don't know, but something.
It's something.
Yeah.
That's how I'm like, oh, thank you. I appreciate the something.
We've reached that point, haven't we?
Okay, okay.
Okay, let's move on to the technos.
But when the virus came, we said we'd look after each other, the three of us. And we did for a time. Till we fell in with this guy Ebony knew, Zoot. He was crazy, like really crazy. But he had this gang, the Locals. And as long as we were with them, we were protected. Or so we thought. Only Ebony couldn't leave it there. No, she had to climb up the top of that tree too. So, she turned him against us.
He was gonna get rid of us, have us wiped out. Because of her.
But he didn't.
Someone let us out. We never found out who, but I swore if I ever came back here.
So yeah, panel, we have talked about this ridiculous backstory before, but like, how did you react to the fight itself, and then yeah, the thoughts on the sisters' big backstory?
I keep wondering why they're not playing Everybody Was Kung Fu Fighting in the background, but it seems ridiculous.
You didn't enjoy the fight? What?
Sabine!
Sabine!
Glorious!
That was well choreographed. What are you talking about?
I mean, I assume it was. There's so many cuts, you can't see anything. I suppose that's one way to hide how badly choreographed something is. I saw a lot of people moving. I saw a lot of movement, so something must have been happening.
I've seen Brave fight better than this. Come on.
Hey, it felt energetic. It felt energetic. We give it that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows martial arts now. This is amazing. I love this. I love when they just suddenly characters could fight. Like, remember when Bray could suddenly fight when she challenged him to the bow staff in front of the Gaians? And it was just like, wait a minute, Bray, you could do this the whole time? Then why do you spend every fight asleep? Like, what? That's how I felt here. Like, oh, Ebony can do martial arts now. That's fabulous. I'm sure that could have come in handy a time or two in the past.
He was keeping it in reserve.
I did like the visual of them fighting it out, like the idea of them fighting it out, not, how it actually looked. Granted, if you can't create good choreography, you've got amateurs who don't actually know how to fight. I guess the best way, this is probably the most unique way they've handled shooting it, so it still looks good and energetic, by having 50,000 cuts. So you never actually see any blows land. You just see a lot of movement, I'll give them props to trying to come up with a more creative way to create a kinetic sense of motion. I'm sure that it's also it works. There are adults who love this kind of fighting style in movies where it's just death by a bunch of cuts. They think they're seeing something, and so I'm like, hey, at least they were like, hey, how do we do this? How do we make it really look ferocious and, like you said, energetic? And so I'll give them some props for coming up with a better way to edit a fight for the show.
Fine.
Not a single blow landed, but that's beside the
No,
point.
exactly. Not a single blow landed, but you can barely tell. You can barely tell.
it was implied, so we can just go with that.
Is this how the girls used to fight at home?
But I do think it's nice of nice visual metaphor for anyone who has these kind of relationships with a relative. It reminds me a lot of Nebula and Gamora in Guardians 2, where they have it out, and in real life we can't do that. We can't actually physically get into it with this loved one that we have a lot of problems with, but the things that we say emotionally can feel like that's what we're doing. And I'm sure that seeing these sisters have so much animosity toward each other that they literally just get into fisticuffs, that there's audience that can relate to that because it must often feel like that when you are dealing with a sibling or any family that you don't get along with. The verbal sparring, the way they make you feel, it feels emotionally like a fight that like you're punching each other, like you're going at each other like rabid animals. So I like it for that, just that idea alone.
I mean, and some families just do have that physical reaction to each other.
And some just wish they could.
Right, and so I think that is relatable, and you feel seen. Like, yes, I wish I could do that to somebody, this person. And it also, I actually appreciated it just because when you hear, okay, it's one thing when Ebony is the only one spouting lines that are supposed to be sassy and are hit and miss. That's the thing. There was a time when every line that Ebony delivered was killer. But, they have definitely gotten lame. But when she's the only one talking like that, it's very just her character. When you now have 3 people who all talk the same, you realize what they're saying is lame. Do you know what I mean? Like when you have 3 people being forced to speak in lame Ebony dialogue all the time to everything, even if it doesn't really make sense given the conversation that's even happening, it actually becomes quite tiresome. So I appreciated an actual physical altercation over listening to these people go back and forth, because I'm already tired of listening to the sisters talk to each other. Because again, Ebony used to have some of the best dialogue, and it's gotten really bad. And now there's 3 of them with the same bad Ebony dialogue talking to each other. And it's already one scene too many. So just let them punch each other. I would rather see that.
Yeah, I get you.
Big backstory.
I mean, yeah, we have to talk about it. We can't ignore it. What did you make of the big supposed backstory that made this big rift between the sisters?
I just feel we got cheated once again I thought the point, again, I have to keep asking, what is the point of the sisters being here? What is it meant to do for Ebony's character? Because they're the people who can tell us who Ebony was before the virus. Ebony really doesn't tell us much. Ebony always makes things very succinct. Like, oh, I had to survive. I never had anybody. No one ever gave a crap about me. But that's just her point of view. You're waiting to hear it from someone else's, and you finally are given 2 people she grew up with in her family who could give us that insight. And was Ebony always a sociopath? That's the question here, right? Was she somebody who, like, if you look at the flashback in season 2, she doesn't kill anybody. She doesn't do anything terrible. But the question is, would she have if circumstances had pushed her to do so? That's what we want answered. Was Ebony always that kind of person, or did the virus create her and take it further? This is what the sisters could give us, all right? And instead, all we get is she's always been a snake. How so, Java? What do you mean? Like, that doesn't explain anything about who Ebony is and who she was. Was she the person who would kill someone who was in their way before the virus? That's what I want answered.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, I get this generic answer that she was just always a terrible person. How so, though? There is a big difference between being a mean girl in high school and immediately thinking to kill someone every time they're in your way. Those are very different people. And I need to know, like, what do you mean she was always terrible? Like, I need more than that. And that's all I got. And then we immediately jumped to, she was always terrible, but when the virus happened, we decided to stick together. Like, that's it? Oh my gosh! No questions are answered. Like, come on. I need to know. Was she somebody who should have been in therapy before the virus? How did your parents respond to her? Again, why do you need vengeance from mom and pa? I want answers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but then the story went on to just that had nothing to do with mum and dad because she's got zoo on us and we had to leave. Like, just bad. It was just done so badly.
Explanation of, like, why would you decide to choose to stand with her after virus if she was so horrible?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you trust her? You know what I mean? Like, why would you even make a pact to stick together with her if she was so terrible? That's why I need to know, what level of terrible are we talking about? Did you just never like her? Did you just never get along? You know what I mean? Because later, again, it'll just be petty sibling rivalry that we'll hear. You know, that'll be it. Like, Ebony will complain that, sometimes she and Siva would be getting along and Java wouldn't allow it. And Java will complain that Ebony got better toys. And it's like, what does she was horrible before the virus even mean?
Mm-hmm.
You just always didn't like her? Or she put a knife in your back? Like, what does it mean? I didn't get any answers about who Ebony was. Okay? I didn't, I'm just left disappointed.
Just think about the missed opportunities here, though. They could have done
There's so many.
They could have done so many with this, and even some more unexpected ones. Because I remember one thing that used to be in my mind when I first watched this was with the way Java was acting, especially, and with how high up in the Technos they were. I kept thinking, was Bray taken away just to annoy Ebony because they knew she had some sort of attachment to him as well? I wouldn't have put that past Java. Just, or claiming that she knew where he was, even though they weren't sure if he was alive.
Yeah.
She could have tormented her sister so badly with that.
There's so many things they could have done. Like, if it was about mum and dad, there's just endless story strands they could have done. Okay, look, if there were, maybe it was an initiation to go in the locos. Maybe Ebony did something to mum while she was dying. Like, you mean something, anything? Like,
she's such a horrible kid that it gave her parents migraines. They almost divorced over their spoiled brat of a child. You know what I mean? Like, they would have done anything to please her, but she was unpleasable. You know what I mean? And it caused fractures in the family. Was Ebony like so temperamental that the whole family had to tiptoe around her, and they saw the strain on their parents' faces trying to, like, what does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to commit to this. Instead, you're going to backpedal and make it seem like Ebony, they wasn't so bad. It was just that the sisters couldn't get along. And I'm just like, it's even when Jay asks, they're building it up. And he's like, why Java? Why this hatred? And Siva goes, tell him. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, what is she going to tell him? And then when Java does, you're just like, really?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Okay.
No, honestly, why do you think they had to tie them into the locos? What was the point? What was the actual point to tie their backstory into the locos? I don't get it. Like,
it's just a lack of creativity, in my opinion. You know, when you
I don't get it.
It was easy. It was just easy. You know, they love to bring things back to Zoot, and they'll get even worse.
Stop it.
Like, the world didn't exist, and there's...
But like, their family, they have their whole backstory themselves. Like, there was a point of having the whole loco.
I agree. I'm just saying it's lazy writing. It's in the same way that the show will act like you'll meet a new person all the way in season 5, and you want to know, what have you been doing to survive since the virus? And they'll only mention like the Chosen, as if there was nothing else that ever existed in all these years you've been surviving. And you'd see it in fan fiction too. You know, people would have fan fiction that takes place after the show,
Oh
and they'd
yeah.
only touchstone they'd ever mention to about a new character is how they survived the Chosen. And he'd be like, your story takes place 6 years like later. You're telling me there's nothing else this person experienced, you know? It's just lazy writing that touches on the most basic thing the audience might remember rather than coming up with anything new or actually thinking of this character's the life they lived, you know? Like, that's why there's very little exploration as to what Java and Siva were doing after they were ousted from the Locos and then met Ram. They've just apparently been with the Technos ever since. You know, there's very little exploration about any of the Technos and what they were doing. They just found Ram. Ram made life better for them, and that's all they've done. You know, and they don't even talk about what they do with Technos, what they've been doing with the Technos for the last few
No,
years.
they don't.
You know? Just, I was starving, then Ram found me, and everything's been great. And only now am I starting to question everything. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no, because that takes creativity. That takes actually thinking about who your character is right now, who they've been, and how they've been affected by their world. And there's nobody feels like doing that. That takes work. Energy, investment, and they don't want to put anything in there. I don't know why. So that's why the characters come across as so flat and not rounded out, not fleshed out. They only exist now. And yes, Lex's laissez-faire recognition of all three sisters and not having to ask a single question, just immediately being going, oh, there's 3 of them. Yeah. and just wanders off to report that to people, just reiterates the ridiculousness of Ebony not recognizing her own frickin' sisters.
I was like, you guys are paying for us now. That's such a ridiculous thing to put in. After you made such a big deal about this reveal, and you just have Lex turn up and go, "Oh, sisters."
He's like, "Oh, well, I'll be." That's it. That's his reaction. Who knew? I didn't know she had clones. Totally forgets whatever he came to tell her. Wasn't that important?
Wow.
Do you know why these people are here? Because they defied the rules. That there will be no violence against us. So here's a little lesson for all of you. So you can see what happens to those who defy us. I said, get on your knees.
Put that down, Ved. That's an order.
Jay and Ebony put a stop to it, while both admonishing each other to keep their people in line. But Pride remains angry at Lex for his passivity, while Lex himself quietly releases further prisoners who had been involved in the attack itself. So yeah, just generally, what did you make of the portrayal of the situation, the ongoing situation in the city, as well as Lex and Dee's struggles over fulfilling their own roles under these conditions?
It's not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. Again, it's at least giving us a visual of the consequences of what would be happening in the city. I like the references to some historical moments and warfare and takeovers. I do appreciate that. You know, it's colonization for babies. I'll give them that. You know, I like that they were even willing to go as far as, you know, this public display that that's where Ved takes it. He doesn't just take these verts away to wherever verts get taken. He puts them on display. He puts them a show. And the conversation that he and, you know, as he's being reprimanded by his brother, like what that could trigger. The fact they're even willing to have that conversation with the civil unrest like that, it's insinuating that Ved was willing to publicly execute, at the very least, somebody to, you know, make a point. And what would happen if you did that in front of a populace that's already on the edge, you know, and what they might have done to Ved if he had acted, if he hadn't been stopped. I'm not saying this is good. It's not bad. And it's an attempt at making this have some substance. This takeover has some substance. Again, I don't know where these verts were when we were not fighting the Technos and we're just accepting. I don't know where they were when Ebony said we're just going to get along with everybody. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. The verts in the city are all over the map how they're going to feel about this. But in its own bubble, the scene is not bad.
I don't know, not bad coming from you almost makes it sound like it was okay, Liz.
Maybe that's what it is. Baseline okay. It's not good. It's baseline okay. It's competent. And I get what they were trying to do with it. And there are at least oh god. There are I think this is what I think they're attempting to paint Lex as conflicted. I think that's what they're trying to do with the stuff they have, like this torn between keeping the peace for Ebony, but his heart not being fully in it. I, I think they're attempting to show that Lex has some conflict going on in his head and is decompartmentalizing everything just to get through each day. Now imagine what they could have done with that, because they even have Dee mention Tyson, and he tells her to shut up. Like this, they could have been doing something with this that would have been pretty freaking awesome to show that Lex's response to everything that's happened is to literally shut down and try not to feel anything, because that is how some people deal with their trauma. If I don't feel anything, I can't be hurt. But sometimes it's impossible not to feel anything. So I think maybe they're attempting to show that, but I can't say that's what's happening. I can't say that. Just that maybe.
That could have been wonderful.
If there was some more consistency with Lex, if they was more fleshed out what he's feeling, what he's going through, if they didn't keep peppering in these moments where he acts clueless and has no idea what's going on with anybody and doesn't seem to have any emotional response to any of it, it could have worked as a through line with Lex in these moments when he, like I said, even though he doesn't agree with what Dee did, he defends her. He arrests these kids when he literally could have called out to the Technos and said, the other two are right here. He doesn't. He takes them to the mall, and then, even though he's arguing with Dee, it could have been implying that that was Lex's way of protecting them from Technos if they have to spend a night in lockup in the safety of the mall. There's things they could have done, and this could have been a good through line for a man in conflict and trying to find the line. But I'm not saying they didn't, so it doesn't all come together. So these moments are very disjointed and leave Lex, again, a blob of a person.
Okay, back at the mall, Salene and Cloe continue to clash. But when Dee realizes that Cloe has had a similar encounter with Ved at the casino, she pays her a visit to see if she wants to talk about it.
What are you talking about? I'm just saying, if he did something to you, you're not alone. You want to talk about it?
Leave me alone.
Okay, but if you ever do, maybe we could do something about it.
Like what?
You know what they say. Don't get mad, get even.
But what did you think about the potential new alliance between Dee and Cloe?
Finally, something interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, we'll say this, credit where credit is due. I think Dee was actually the perfect person to see behind Chloe's snipey attitude, to recognize there's something something else there. Because Dee she's not very offended by the way people talk to her. Or if they're upset, she doesn't seem to be bothered all that much. She might be, the most she'll do is like, whoa, why are you yelling at me? I had nothing to do with this. That seems to be the most she responds when someone is like, snaps at her. She doesn't seem very bothered by other people's mood swings. And it does speak to her observance, which has been there. Dee does seem observant. Again, we don't know why. We don't know what's going on with her or why she does anything, but she is observant. She does pay attention to what people do and is clearly trying to work out why they do it. So I think it's very fitting she notices the way Chloe snipes and snaps at people, and instead of being offended or annoyed, is willing to read into what's going on, and has been listening to things she has said and was able to put something together on her own. And immediately, she doesn't really ask questions, she just throws out the situation. That Ved guy, he humiliated me too. She doesn't know if that's what happened to Chloe, but she just throws it out there. That means she was working it out for herself. And Chloe responding to somebody who was able to get past her defenses because that's Chloe. That's clearly what it is. This is a defense mechanism Chloe has thrown out, and here's the first person who's cared enough to climb under the wire. And why? Of course, she responds to that. Somebody who actually seems to give a damn, you know. And even then, like Dee goes immediately into a plan of action. Like I like that works for me. That makes sense to me.
And Dee was the right person for this because she didn't know Chloe as a little girl. She doesn't treat Chloe as a tiny little girl. Like she's not a little kid to Dee.
Well, Dee basically has no expectations of what Chloe should act like.
No.
Is what it really comes down to. She doesn't know her, and so she's not trying to hold her up to any sort of standard of behavior because she has no idea what Chloe's natural state is. This could be Chloe's natural state as far as Dee is concerned, and she's used to dealing with this.
Yeah.
But I do think it just says so much that Chloe actually responds to somebody who climbs around her defenses and gets right to the heart of the matter. You know, Dee doesn't come in with any attack or reprimand, just what she thinks happened and that they can do something about it. I would find that very empowering if I were 14 and in my feelings, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was just nice to give Chloe an ally, just someone she can speak to.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was coming, but I was like, yeah, this is nice. Like,
and just the idea alone, the girls wanting to get even with Fed.
It was suddenly like, ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it speaks to the imagination.
To see what they're gonna do. I ain't gonna lie. Kind of a nice throwback. There's been so many big things ever since The Chosen that there's been very few small moments that I missed from like earlier season, especially season 1, where the conflicts are small and they're personal and they're just emotional. And it took me back to the girls in the mall needing to get back at the boys for treating them like slaves. And they're meeting in the dead of night and explaining the situation. And this is what we're going to do to break the boys down. You know, that's a small conflict, but it's so much more engaging and relatable because those are the kind of conflicts we deal with in our everyday life. We're not dealing with gigantic invasions and our friends being enslaved and kidnapped, you know? We're dealing with small... Well, I don't know about you.
I don't know about...
Mine aren't at the moment. I have to deal with small interpersonal co-parenting, you know, conflicts. You know what I mean? That's what my life is. And so I liked that we're actually touching on a small kind of conflict.
Yeah.
I agree, yeah. I have missed that.
I was locked in as soon as Dee was like, we could get him back. I was like, we could? Yes, I want to see this. I want to see you get back at him.
We're here for this.
I am here for this.
I guess like on a similar vein, I think that's why I kind of like the whole Pooh and Pong situation. It's a small little drama that's just contained to them. I like that.
Yes, that was another thing that I liked.
And it's so fitting.
Yeah. You know, it was nice to see Salene being able to be playful.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that actually puts a smile on her face. Now that the children are actually talking and they're responding to her. They're responding to her. You can see that that's one less thing she's fully like it's overbearingly worrying her all the time, you know, and they're acting more like children and having a better, healthier response. Like what they're doing is working, you know, and so she can enjoy them in a whole different way and be playful with them. And to see her smile over this little teasing thing without worrying about causing more trauma to the kids, or she obviously has a moment with Pride where she's like, it just hits her like, oh my gosh, it's up to us for those kids to have a future. And Pride just leaves her hanging. Like, I didn't sign up for that. Those are my kids. That's the look he gave her. It's quite a load you take it on, Salene. Good luck with that. He's like, I'm not saying anything. I don't want to commit to anything. But
he was like, why am I here? I shouldn't be here. I should be back in the forest. I'm like, yeah, you should be.
I love that that's his response after she had that conversation with him. That's when he started to panic. Like, why am I here?
Oh, that was hilarious, yeah.
Like, why are you freaking
Pride.
out now, Pride? It was your idea to play Happy Families with the kids.
You can go anytime, Pride. Anytime.
You know the way.
Doors wide open. Yep.
Yeah, we've all been asking that question, Pride, for quite some time. But again, that is a moment I like because just like this subtle Ellie moment of her reacting to Salene telling her she has to keep fighting, Pride having this sort of mini breakdown of like, I've got to do something. I don't know what, but I've got to do something is a nice setup for the next plot line that's coming, and I appreciated it.
Okay, yeah. All those leads us directly to the final thoughts of the episode. So the episode ends with the knowledge that someone has planted a bomb in the hotel as Ebony falls asleep. So yeah, as we were just discussing, do you think the episode has done a good enough job to set up all these strands about bad feelings against Ebony and who the potential suspect could be?
I have to I didn't instantly see it coming who did it. So that's something.
I take this episode in a bubble. In this bubble of an episode, this episode has shown that Ebony is not well liked and that there's turmoil in the streets and that, yeah, someone would want to blow her up or do something to her. But when you consider all the episodes that came before, it feels like it came out of nowhere because they've been really inconsistent to how the city kids respond to Ebony. You know what I mean? And so I don't think they did a good job in the timeline of the story setting this up. But just in the episode alone, if it was just a standalone episode, this episode did a good job of setting up that someone would want to take her out. She's not well liked. She's got a lot of enemies, and people have reasons. But
yeah,
as like episode 9 of a season, no, I don't think they've led to this very well. They've been all over the map about how the city kids feel about Ebony. One minute everybody hates her. The next minute they're cheering at whatever she says. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's
thinking
very
she's a
inconsistent.
hero. So it's like, in that case, it feels like it came out of nowhere. Like, oh, this episode everybody hates Ebony. You know, we don't love her anymore. We're not on her side. We're not cheering for her. We're not getting along with the Technos anymore. So that does detract from what's happening in this episode. By itself, it's great. It's okay. But part of a bigger picture, it's inconsistent. Like, what the frick? Is everyone what's everyone gonna be feeling tomorrow? You know, I have no idea.
Man, that feels like the whole theme of this whole series. By itself, it's okay. But when you connect it to any other episode, everything else gone before and after, it's like, where's coming from? And yeah. By itself is fine, but when you connect it to anything else, it's like, well, yeah, where does this come from?
Where did this come from? Like, okay, fine, you know. I did like the way it was shot, the scene. I like that they went for a quiet tension. You're just waiting for something to happen. Like, why are we holding on Ebony getting ready for bed? You know what I mean? Like, there's just, it was taking its time. I even like the shot that we're seeing her through the reflection of her mirror only. Heck, you could read something into that if you wanted to. You know, like, that's the way they chose to show her, was simply through a reflection. Maybe they're saying, we'll never know Ebony. We'll only see her through other people's eyes. Da-da-da. That's me desperately clinging for meaning.
Wow, Liz, that's poetic.
Wow. I know, I'm trying so hard, right?
Really?
Woo!
That is a strong visual that's how we see her through a mirror only, especially in an episode where we're still given no insight to who the frick Ebony was before the episode, before the virus, before this all began. Right? Even for the people who grew up with her, they can't tell us anything interesting. Right? We'll never know Ebony. So maybe I'm gonna take that artistic. I'm gonna take it because I need it. Okay, I need it, so I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna read into this artistic choice and decide if somebody did this for me. But I think it's beautifully shot. I love the nighttime lighting in this episode. I always love it when they remember that it's the freaking apocalypse and there are no lights. And yeah, just the quiet of that whole scene. And you're just waiting for something to happen. And then, you know, you're like, wait, what is that? There's this person, and where are they exactly? And what are they doing? And then, it's the language of it's a cinema bomb. Anybody watching can recognize that that is something bad, and it's got a countdown and everything. And then she just quietly gets into bed. Like, she has a moment where she thinks she hears something. I
Yeah.
thought it was a nice scene. And I gotta say, between this and Chloe and Dee, this is the first time since the first episode where I was like, ooh, I want to see what happens next. This is the first time. 9 episodes in, and I finally want to see the next episode.
Having said that, why did they then immediately spoil it by showing that little interscene with Java and Siva? Like, that didn't even need to be there. Like, keep the mystery open wide. You know what I mean? Why was that even put in there?
I guess they... Well, okay. They think what they're doing is... the breadcrumbs. They want to set up these different people who could have done this. They want to add the suspicion of, why did Java want to be away from the hotel tonight? She's supposed to be guarding her sister. They should be. Siva says as much. Like, who's going to watch her? We're supposed to be guarding her. And Java is insistent that they go out. She's bored. She's restless. They want to add the suspicion that she may have had something to do with this, and that's why she deliberately made sure that her and Siva would not be there. I'm not saying it works, but
it didn't work for me.
Yeah, I think when we get to the whole who did this, who was a part of it, that's part of the, like, well, where were you, Java? Siva, you were supposed to be watching her when this happened, and you were conveniently not at your post. And they've already set up that the girls hate her. Siva will even say as much to her later. Like, why did you want to go out that night? Did you know about this? Did you have something to do with it?
No, that makes sense now that you've put it like that. It's just, the way they put it there was like, writing them out of the suspect list. I was like, well, why even do that? Wait, half an episode.
Yeah, like her whole behavior at the casino. She's determined to go to the casino, but she doesn't exactly seem like she's having fun. She's ordering people to play poker or cards or something with her. It's like she's just determined to not be there.
It felt like she was determined to have an alibi.
Right.
No, yeah, I get that now that you guys mention it.
So, yeah, it's there to make us think that Java might have done it.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I just wish they left it like till the beginning of the next episode or something. Like, but yeah, I agree with everything you guys were saying. This definitely felt like I can't wait to see what happens next. It's the first time I felt this since the season started. So that's something.
Yeah, it is something. I was like, oh, what is that unfamiliar feeling? Loathing. Sorry. It's like the one song from Wicked I know.
Anticipation? Mild excitement?
It's been so long! I didn't even recognize it.
But yeah, I had no clue who it ended up being. Like, we'll get to this next episode, but yeah, that shocked me. That did shock me.
Yeah, I can't wait till we get that reveal. I'm like, what? Damn, she got to work fast. Like, yeah, I promise I'll keep fighting. And immediately put together. Oh my gosh. Jack, what did you leave around your workshop?
Hey, he had everything though.
Plans to get rid of the Chosen.
Oh, but yeah, overall, a good episode. What do you think?
Any episode that actually makes me want to watch the next one, I guess, has to be called good at this point in time. Like, again, I mean, I really liked episode 3 and didn't make me want to continue. So, I don't know. I'll say the episode was good.
Woo, it has the Liz seal of approval.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to ask me what an episode to watch, at this point I'd say watch episode 1, 3, and 9. At this point, watch those guys. Like, you can skip pretty much all the others. Watch those 3, definitely. Oh man, I'm going to start making a list of the episodes that I can actually recommend. The rest you just get highlights. Just read the cliff notes on the other episodes.
Yeah, that brings Series 4, Episode 9 to a close. Thank you very much to the panel, and you can show your support by clicking on that like and subscribe and following us on all the major platforms. You can also leave us a comment or get in touch if you'd like to take part in a future episode of the podcast yourself. Just search for the tribe.uk or Conversations on Eagle Mountain. You can can also throw us a donation. Just head on over to buymeacoffee.com/thetribe.co.uk. And we'll see you next time for episode 10. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.